It's Friday, near the end of the day, and you have big plans for tonight. And you just finish implementing this feature, and it's reported for the business, of course, while after finishing the last code review fixes and while packing your laptop to leave the office, you merge and tag it and let it deploy automatically to production. Sure, why not? Or do you? Okay, let's start with a quick show of hands. Who has automated deployment from Git? Everyone, right? It's 2025. Who deploys more than once a day? Okay, sure, it's a commodity. Who has reliable tests running in the CI pipeline before the deployment? Okay, less than I expected. Who has post-deploy tests on the deployed environment? Nice. Who has monitoring on the production environment? Everyone. Who thinks it's reliable enough and not spammy with false alerts and false positives? Ah, good for you. Who has good, easy, reliable revert functionality? Who has automated reverts of suspicious deployments where metrics drop or error rate jumps? Who pushes fearlessly to production on Friday afternoon? Hi, I'm Alon Nisser. I'm a principal. Something wrong with the sound. I'm a principal engineer with Zen City, where we try to help local government and law enforcement leaders make informed, transparent, and effective decisions that earn the trust of the communities they serve. We serve over 100 million people worldwide, citizens worldwide in the communities we serve, 4 of the 5 big cities in the United States, etc., etc. And of course, everything is powered by a lot of tech and a lot of AI. Now I said AI. And this talk is about CI/CD as an unfinished journey. And I believe that if you answered no to my previous question about Fearless Friday deployments, then you might have some part of a working CI/CD solution. You might have some of the machinery. You might have the attitude. You might have some of the working parts, but you're not there yet. As I see it, First Friday deployments are the litmus test or the holy grail if you want of a real CI/CD solution, and I'll try to prove why. Because continuous delivery isn't just about pushing your code eventually to production.
Hello.
Whoa.
Speak.
I see. Oh, feedback. Oh, because continuous delivery, I do it here, isn't just pushing your code to production somehow. It's about moving code to production in a sustainable, automated, and a continuous manner. And I try to prove that Fearless Friday deployments are the litmus test of if you're there or not. Okay, but why? Why won't you fearlessly deploy it Friday afternoon? Maybe you don't trust your system to protect you enough from deploying a regression. Or maybe you're not sure you can detect a regression fast enough and automatically revert. Or maybe you're suspicious your revert functionality isn't that well that you can just revert anything you want on wheel or automatically, yes, including the database migrations. Or maybe you're just wary of needing to babysit a long deployment, going through a manual verification script, and being paged Friday night. Or maybe everything works, but you have long-running jobs in production and your deployment will terminate them and you need to protect them. Or maybe just so slow it would take hours and nobody wants to do it. Or maybe your system is just so fragile you don't dare deploy without having a DevOps engineer nearby with a knife between his teeth, ready to SSH into that CI server and save the day. Or maybe, is that still a thing in 2025? I'm not sure. Your deployment are tied up to your releases. Is that the way you expose new features to your clients? So you need to coordinate with help desk and sales and CSMs and marketing, etc. Or maybe your architecture is just so coupled together, you can't just push your code to production without pushing those two fronted up, the ingress, the 10 other microservices, the BFF, etc., etc., etc. The reason may vary, but you must be asking yourself now, okay, Who cares? So what? We cut a few hours from the deployment slots at the day Friday. We get a whole week to deploy. We don't care about that. Okay, sure, I got it. So Friday morning is good. End of the regular weekday. And how exactly is it not before end of day regular weekday? 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours before the sprint planning, before the big client demo, before the important convention, before lunch. Suddenly we find out it's Friday all week. We deploy less, which means we deploy bigger batches of code and with them more bugs and more problems. And where is our code now? The new code? It's queued in endless and stuck in endless PR branches, waiting to be reviewed and reapproved every time main changes. Some might just get lost in the limbo, never get deployed. Other would eventually get deployed, but now you're far after you finish this feature and and you're completely out of context. You're being pulled back to review the metrics and check everything. Okay, but we're developers. We're smart. There's some way to tune this up. We're smart. We can work around this. We can automate this. We'll codify into the CI/CD solution, into the CI/CD pipeline, all the restriction. Don't deploy on Friday. Don't deploy the convention calendar, the big clients demos, the sprint planning, the long-running job. And it will merge into the production branch and it will automatically deploy our code to production once we have an available deployment slot. What's the problem? We actually done that. Okay, so now you're not only deploying less because you have less deployment slots, your code is just being deployed to production randomly with a complete disconnection to when the developer merges and finish the feature. This is probably only worse. Okay, so you remove the automation. And we tell the developers that whomever you merge during a deployment slot, you're responsible to taking your code to production. All the code waiting. But developers don't like to play Russian roulette, deploying tons of lines of code that somebody else wrote, maybe not even from their team or the group. And they find ways to evade this questionable honor. And again, deployment rate down, batch size up. After one too many failure, we become even more deploy averse, and some mid-manager guy comes up with a manual verification script. From now on, the developer who pushes to production needs to go through this whole list and verify the app hasn't regressed in some unexpected way. Turns out it doesn't really help with detecting those kind of regression, but it really helps demotivating developers from actually merging their code and deploying to productions. And again, deployment rate down and batch size up. So we decide to nominate a release manager. What year is it? 2010, something like that, who tries to integrate all this, and he rightfully insists on having some pre-production environment where all the code would be integrated together and reviewed and QA'd and checked together. It will be released as a version. Where is your code, new code now? Queued before this new environment in ever-growing queues. It would never get there. And the problem with big batches of code being deployed is not just we're introducing more bugs and more problems. It also means reverts are bigger. Because now we're not just reverting a small deployment, we're reverting a whole batch of a feature being deployed together, probably including the bug fixes of the previous deployment. It means our code is less debuggable because now we can't follow this one-line change and understand what happened. Now it's 10 features and 10 teams fighting a blame game on who broke the deployment and who broke production this time. It's harder. It also means we're learning less because we're not deploying more experiments. Our customers are not seeing the new features. We learn less about what they're using and what they're not using, what's working and what's not working, which means we're underserving the business. We're losing. And no, not even a secret weapon of adding more Jira columns and Jira fields would help us. We caught in a slow deployment cycle, and it just gets worse. This doesn't end well. Okay. I got it. You're slow, but it's not because of what I said. You're slow because you're safe. It's all about safety. Safety comes first. Sure. The only problem is that any research in the last 15, 20 years, for example, the famous Accelerate research that grew up to be DORA metrics or the DORA research, and almost every other research in the industry finds out there's a very strong correlation between throughput metrics, e.g. lead time and deployment rate, and quality and stability metrics, failure rates and the median time to recover. You're not going slow and safe. You're going slow and dangerous and breaking. We deploy code to production, and maybe this word holds a clue for us. As we as a human race are doing production system, e.g. factories, a lot longer than we're doing software. Maybe you can learn something from this world. In The Goal, a novel by Dr. Eliyahu Goldart, he talks, is a novel about a company with a broken production system. The factory floor described in The Goal is a bottleneck-ridden, chaotic scene. We work with piles of work in process, jamming access to the machine. Some are standing idle, some are overworked with ever-growing queues between them. Managers and workers constantly in a firefighting mode, trying to meet ever-changing deadlines and failing. And amid this chaos, managers exerting pressure and power to promote the must-have alert customer orders and promote them through this congestion pipeline, and of course, creating more havoc. Does this sound familiar to anyone from your software world? I at least have been there. Bugged features, burned developers that are afraid to push to production, product teams that don't believe the developers would actually ever deliver anything, and product people trying to push through this, their only must-have feature through chaos, extracting power, and of course, creating even more problems. The Phoenix Project, which is almost the last book I'll recommend, and if you haven't read it, you probably should, and the new sequel, The Unicorn Project, is applying the lessons from The Goal to the world of software. The IT department of the big code described in the Phoenix Project is exactly like the factory floor in The Goal. Understaffed, overworked, underachieving, always in a firefighting mode, always in chaos, always breaking. And they show and find that work in process, the big killer of industrial productivity, as found out by both industry acolytes and researchers in the 70s and 80s, is also the big killer of software productivity, work in process. Okay, but where are the work in process piles from the factory floor? I don't see them in our techie, nice, clean offices. The origins of this talk is in an offsite we had the leadership of the R&D in Zen City a few years ago, where I've led a workshop about trying to apply a theory of constraint visualization techniques like CRT, current reality tree, to our R&D paints. And when we finished sticking the stickies on the big board and we moved back, there was deployment all over the place. And this got me thinking about deployment as a first-level concern of the development organization, and got me to understand that the work-in-process piles I was searching for, it's my code waiting to be deployed in those endless PR branches. So how do we escape a slow deployment cycle? About 15 years ago, Hammond and Osborne gave a talk that changed the world in Velocity 2009. The Hammond and Osborne then lead devs at Flickr. It was a company someday. It talked about how Flickr does 10 deployments a day. It seems imaginary at an age where companies struggle to do a deployment every 2 weeks, every quarter, a yearly version for those of you who are enough time in this industry. And they changed what seemed to be possible. This was the ChatGPT moment or the iPhone moment of DevOps. Everybody came back and said, okay, we can do things differently. They talked about cooperation between dev and ops, then a different world. they talk about new tools they develop, and they talk about culture and attitude. I do think that we have far better tools now, right? And we even moved a bit forward with culture. I think we still have a way there. But what really caught my eye, rewatching this recently, is how deliberate the whole process, everything is there, how thoughtful every part of the CI/CD is, to the point that even today I can take good ideas out of it. So how we escape a slow deployment cycle? It starts with culture. It starts with understanding that deployment isn't some overthought of something that happens after we finish developing code, something that someone else does. It's what we do. It's who we are. It's a first level concern of the development organization. It should be treated as this. It should be treated in the design time. It should be treated as a part of what developers are expected to know and do and understand. It's what we do. How do we escape a slow deployment cycle? How do we get good at doing anything? By practicing, of course, by doing it a lot. So deploy a lot, but try to be deliberate about it. Try to be as knowledgeable as possible at all the working parts and dive deep into what you don't understand. And when you deploy a lot, you learn to spot the signals of something going wrong. And then you can codify them into your monitoring or hopefully into your CI/CD pipeline so it won't go wrong. When you deploy a lot, you learn to detect the subtle issues, the ones that happen once every 64 deployments because this cache is being cleaned. The ones that happens only when would you deploy on a daylight saving time change or across UTC time. Did this happen to you? It did happen to me. When you deploy a lot, you find out the recurring issues that masquerade as transient issues that happen only on the specific coincidence of issues. And most importantly, when you deploy a lot, you reduce the anxiety and fear connected with slow, big batch, low frequency deployments. And as we all know, fear is the mind killer, and we want our dev teams to be free of it. Now what? Continuous improvement. There's some stuff that if you don't have, you probably should be dedicating all your dev cycle into getting, most importantly, good, reliable, automated testing in the CI pipeline. Once you have it, let's go back to the checklist of the reasons you won't deploy it Friday afternoon and devote some dev cycle each time to solve it. Fragility, speed, revertibility, regression detecting, etc., etc. We can go through this and solve it until we check it out of a list, until we remove it. I talked a lot about slow deployment, but when we move back and after we finish tackling slow deployments, we find out our code might also be stuck in other places. For example, endless, useless code review cycles, waiting product specs, back and forth with the designers, etc., etc. There are some companies trying to tackle this new monitoring space. For example, LinearB, I think the CEO talked here yesterday, and you might want to check into them. So let me sum up. I'm not saying you must deploy on Friday afternoon just to make a point. But if you're afraid of deploying on Fridays, if it's the big no-no of your organization, then it's a smell on the health and the robustness of your CI/CD solution. So challenge yourself to deploy when you finish stuff and when you need. Sure, you'll get paged a few times, but eventually you'll grow up a far more robust system and a far more healthy attitude. And as you deploy more and more, you'll get paged less and less. It's worth it. Questions? No questions. Remarks, comments? Okay. After I finished the talk, I bumped into this great blog post by Charity Majors. It's called the Friday Deploy Freezes Are Exactly Like Murdering Puppies. While your opinions may vary, it's a great blog post and I really recommend the reading and the reference for other stuff I recommended here. You can check the link and the QR code if you want to see the slides. Thank you very much for listening.